Anxiety kills before death does. You feel it the moment you wake up. Before your feet hit the floor, your mind has already run ahead of you into a meeting that hasn't happened, a conversation that may never come, a disaster your imagination built overnight while you slept. Your body is here. Your mind is somewhere in a future that does not exist, and it is exhausting you for a war that will never be fought. Here is the strange part. The people who suffer most from this are not the weak. They are the sharp ones, the capable ones, the ones who see every angle. So why did the sharpest minds in Rome, men who commanded armies and ran empires, crumble into shaking, sleepless wrecks over things that never arrived? One man watched it happen up close, and what he discovered about the machinery of fear is something almost no one has been told correctly for 2,000 years. Let me take you to a villa outside Rome. The man sitting there is Seneca, advisor to an emperor, one of the wealthiest men alive, and he cannot sleep. He is writing letters late into the night, and in those letters, he confesses something a man of his stature was never supposed to admit. He is afraid, not of one thing, of everything and nothing at once. A low, constant hum of dread that follows him through marble halls and past bowing servants. And he had reason to be afraid. He served Nero, an emperor who executed people on a whim, sometimes over dinner. Seneca knew with cold certainty that one day a soldier might arrive at his door with an order for his death. Imagine living every single day under that shadow. Most men in his position drank themselves numb. Some went mad. A few simply gave up and died inside long before the soldier ever came. But Seneca did something different. He started to study his own fear the way a physician studies a disease. He watched it, he tracked it, and he noticed something that stopped him cold. He realized that almost everything he had ever suffered over, he had suffered over in his mind alone. The catastrophes he rehearsed at 3 in the morning almost never happened. And on the rare occasion something bad did arrive, it never arrived in the monstrous shape his imagination had given it. He had paid the tax of 1,000 disasters and collected on almost none of them. And then he wrote a line that has outlived every emperor he ever served. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Simple, almost too simple, but underneath it was a machine, a 3-part code for cutting anxiety at the root. And the first part begins with a question so uncomfortable that most people spend their whole lives avoiding it. Before we get to that question, I need you to feel what Seneca actually understood, because this is where most people get him wrong. He was not telling you to think positive. He was not telling you to imagine everything working out. That kind of advice is useless to a man who genuinely might be killed by breakfast. Seneca went the opposite direction. He walked straight toward the fear. Here is the trap he identified. Anxiety survives on vagueness. It is a shape in the dark. When you feel that hum of dread, notice how your mind refuses to name the actual thing. It just circles. Something is wrong. Something bad is coming. I can't relax. It stays blurry on purpose because a blurry threat can be anything, and a threat that can be anything can never be solved. That is the prison. You cannot fight a fog, and you already know this feeling. Think about the last time you had to send a difficult message. You wrote it, you deleted it, you picked up your phone 20 times and put it back down. For hours, maybe days, you carried a weight in your chest that was heavier than the message itself could ever be. And when you finally hit send, the reply came back ordinary. Fine. The mountain you had been carrying was made of nothing. You suffered the whole climb for a peak that was never there. That gap between the fear you felt and the reality you got, that gap is where your life is quietly leaking out. Hours, days, years, if you add them all up. Stolen not by your problems, but by the ghosts of problems. So Seneca's first step was brutal in its honesty. Drag the fear into the light, stop letting it stay a fog. He would sit down and force himself to ask in exact words, what specifically am I afraid will happen? Not something bad, the actual event. Name it, write it, say it out loud until it stops being a shadow and becomes a sentence. Because the moment a fear becomes a specific sentence, something shifts. It stops being infinite. It gets edges, and anything with edges can be measured. Anything that can be measured can be faced. But naming it was only step one. And step 1 on its own can actually make things worse, because now you're staring directly at the thing that scares you. Seneca knew that, which is why the second step is the one that changed everything, and it's the step almost everyone skips. Here is what Seneca did next, and it sounds insane at first. He did not try to calm himself down. He did the opposite. He took the fear he had just named, and he made it worse, on purpose. He would sit with the disaster and ask, all right, suppose it happens. Suppose the very worst version of it arrives at my door. Then what? He called this practice a kind of rehearsal for hardship. Instead of running from the catastrophe, he walked all the way into it in full detail, in his mind. If he lost his fortune, what then? He pictured the plain bread, the rough cloak, the small room, and he noticed something astonishing. He could survive it. It was not death. It was just less. If he were exiled, what then? He had already been exiled once to a barren island for 8 years, and he had lived. He had written. He had endured. The worst had already come once, and it had not destroyed him. This is the part that breaks the machine of anxiety. Fear gets its power from the words, and then. And then what? And then what? Your mind runs the terror right up to the edge of a cliff and stops, leaving you dangling over an unknown drop that your imagination paints as infinite and fatal. Anxiety lives in that blank space after the fall, so Seneca filled in the blank. He followed the fear past the edge and looked at what was actually at the bottom, and almost every time what was at the bottom was survivable. Hard, unpleasant, but survivable. A life he could still live. Stop and feel how different this is from what you normally do. When dread hits you at night, you do not follow it to the end. You flinch. You grab your phone. You distract yourself. You numb it. You shove it back into the fog. And by doing that, you keep it alive. You never let it finish its sentence. So it repeats the first half forever. And then what? And then what? All night. For years. Modern psychology has circled all the way back to this. There is a technique researchers use for chronic worry today called decatastrophizing, and it is almost word for word what Seneca was doing in candlelight 2,000 years ago. You take the fear. You ask, what is the worst that could realistically happen? Then you ask, and could I cope with it? And the act of answering that question honestly, actually answering it, physically lowers the alarm response in the brain. The threat stops being a monster in the fog and becomes a problem on a list. Named, sized, survivable. Seneca had no brain scans. He just had a life spent staring down death and the courage to look directly at what scared him instead of away. But there is still a third step, because naming the fear and surviving it in your mind is not enough. Not if you want to actually get your life back. And this final step is where Seneca turns from a philosopher into something more useful, a strategist. So, here is the whole code, and here is what you can do with it tonight. Step 1. Name it. When the dread comes, do not let it stay a cloud. Ask out loud if you have to. What exactly am I afraid of? Force it into one clear sentence. Give the ghost a body. Step 2. Follow it to the end. Ask. And then what would actually happen? Walk past the edge of the cliff. Describe the bottom in detail. 9 times out of 10 you will find, as Seneca did, that the bottom is solid ground you could stand on. And step 3, the one that turns philosophy into freedom. Divide the fear in 2. Seneca understood that every worry splits into 2 piles, things you can control and things you cannot. So take your named fear and ask, is there a single action I can take today that changes the odds? If there is, do it. Take that one action and let the anxiety become fuel instead of poison. And if there is nothing you can do, if it sits entirely outside your hands, then carrying it changes nothing except the quality of your one and only life. You set it down, not because it stopped mattering, because worry was never going to move it anyway. Name it, face it, divide it. That is the code. Remember the question we started with. Why did the sharpest men in Rome crumble over disasters that never came? Now you know. It was never the disasters. It was the fog. It was the unfinished sentence. The fear left blurry and unnamed and unfollowed, running in the dark forever. They suffered 1,000 deaths in imagination and died only once in reality. and Seneca refused to live that way. So, here is the truth to carry out of this. You will not remember the disasters that terrified you tonight. In a year, most of them will not have happened at all. The only thing you will have lost is the life you didn't live while you were busy being afraid. Name the fear, follow it home, and take back the hours it was quietly stealing. If this reached something real in you, subscribe and stay, because the ancients understood the mind in ways we are only now remembering, and the next thing they knew might be the thing you most need to hear.